Now we are going to present another item for consideration. This is the item 8B.37. Le colline de Prosecco di Congliano a Valdobbiadene, Italy. The draft decision concerning this item will be presented by ICOMOS. Please, ICOMOS, you are welcome.
Good afternoon. The ICOMOS evaluation of this nomination can be found in document INF 8B1 add on page 12 of the English version and page 38 of the French version. The nominated cultural landscape is located in the Veneto region of Italy and is a smaller portion of the region's large Prosecco wine production area. The World Heritage Committee referred back this nomination at its 42nd session in Panama last year and requested the State Party to refocus the proposed outstanding universal value, refine the boundary and buffer zone, and complete an aspect of the protection of the property. In July 2018, the State Party requested the assistance of ICOMOS. Through an advisory mission and other exchanges, this dialogue enabled a complete reconceptualization of the justification of outstanding universal value, enabling a sharpened consideration of attributes, selection of criteria, review of issues of authenticity and integrity, and reconsideration of the boundary and buffer zone. The previously nominated area shown on this slide of over 20,000 hectares was similar to the designation of the Conigliano Valdobbiadene Prosecco Superiore DCOG area with a buffer zone of more than 23,000 hectares. The property now consists of an area of just over 9,000 hectares, focused on the hogback landform and vineyard areas. The buffer zone has also been reduced. These changes have allowed the State Party to focus on the areas of greatest authenticity and integrity, and to exclude areas that were not coherent in relation to the history, land use, condition, and character. The landscape is characterized by hogback hills, small vineyards on steep inclines with narrow grassy terraces called ciglioni, creating a mosaic patterning or patchwork of forests, small settlements, and vineyards, all combining to provide spectacular views. The revised focus is on the interaction of human settlement in the specific topographical context of the hogbacks. Land use practices give the landscape its distinctive checkerboard appearance with rows of high vines known as balucera, interspersed with rural settlements and forests. Careful management of water, forests, and erosion have also contributed to the distinctive characteristics of the landscape. Because of the steep terrain, much of the vineyard work is done by hand. Sustaining ecological processes is important to support the values of this landscape. The revisions to the boundary and justification to accord with the hogback landform has assisted a more coherent justification for outstanding universal value according to Criterion 5. While changes have occurred and various challenges remain, the revised nominated property meets the requirements of integrity and authenticity. The boundary and buffer zone are appropriately delineated. The factors affecting the nominated property include urban development and expansion, agricultural transformations, landslides, and demographic and socio-economic shifts. Poor quality infrastructure, urbanization, and industrial constructions in the buffer zone detrimentally impact on the setting, and there are buildings in the property and buffer zone in poor condition. Future wind and solar power installations in the buffer zone could also create a detrimental impact in the future. The legal protection and management system for the property are adequate, although further implementation is needed. In 2018, the World Heritage Committee indicated 3 bases for the previous nomination to be referred back. The first requested the state party to redefine the nomination, refocusing the potential outstanding universal value on criteria 4 and 5. Through this dialogue with ICOMOS, the state party has opted to present the nomination on the basis of criterion 5 alone. The second asked the state party to redefine the boundaries and buffer zones. ICOMOS considers that this has been crucial to the improvement of the nomination and has underpinned a more coherent nomination. The final point asked the state party to complete the adoption process by the 28 concerned municipalities of the tool technical rule Articolo Unico. This has been achieved. To conclude, ICOMOS recommends that the Colline del Prosecco di Canigliano e Valdobbiadene, Italy, be inscribed in the World Heritage List, and has included a number of further, on basis of criterion 5, and has included a number of further recommendations in the draft decision to aid the long-term conservation of the property. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much. May I have comments from the committee members? Tunisia, please.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Je voudrais, au nom de la Tunisie, remercier ICOMOS pour le rapport, que ce soit le rapport écrit qui nous a été remis ou le rapport oral que nous venons de suivre. Et je voudrais particulièrement remercier l'État partie qui, à la suite de la décision de l'année dernière, a gardé le contact avec les instances consultatives et apporté un certain nombre de modifications significatives pour part de son dossier, ce qui a permis d'avoir la recommandation d'inscription que la Tunisie appuie. Mais je rappelle pour cohérence, puisque depuis ce matin on parle de cohérence, nous voyons déjà depuis l'année dernière que ce dossier avait quelques velléités qui lui permettaient d'aller vers l'inscription. On est content aujourd'hui que, après les modifications qui ont été faites, un grand nombre d'observateurs et de scientifiques trouvent que cette proposition, dans ce cas-là, peut être envisagée dans une logique d'inscription. Nous nous en félicitons et nous remercions l'État partie d'avoir fait ces efforts.
Thank you very much. Spain, please.
Muchas gracias, señor presidente. Italia nos trae una candidatura que es de buena factura, de muy buena presentación y que también supone a la vez un ejemplo de combinación de ese buen proyecto con el respeto a las normas. A nadie nos gusta que una candidatura sea devuelta, a Italia se devolvió, pero el Estado parte, lejos de sucumbir al desasosiego, lo que hizo fue tomar impulso y lanzarse a corregir la candidatura con los elementos correctivos que se le establecían. Y aquí está, con una buena candidatura preparada para la inscripción. Por eso les felicitamos. Este paisaje cultural evolutivo que data del siglo XVII representa, entre otras cosas, el esfuerzo continuo y permanente a lo largo de la historia del ser humano por lograr procesos productivos eficientes que en un lugar concreto de la geografía permitan el desarrollo y la supervivencia de la comunidad. Siempre las comunidades locales están en la base de ese tipo de proyectos y lo cuentan de tal manera que lo hacen pervivir hasta estos momentos. Quizá la propia comunidad local, como siempre, que es la que está a pie de obra, va a tener que ser la encargada de velar para que las permanentes tentaciones que el progreso ofrece de sucumbir a los procesos productivos e industriales no sean atendidas en la medida que no puedan perjudicar algo que en este momento forma parte o formará parte dentro de unos minutos del patrimonio de la humanidad. Queremos, por tanto, felicitar a Italia y decir que tenemos plena confianza en que este Estado parte atenderá, como ha hecho ahora, las recomendaciones que se le están planteando para conseguir que este sitio del mundo se conserve como está y sea digno de permanecer en esa lista. Felicidades al Estado parte, felicidades a ICOMOS por el trabajo que se ha hecho y indudablemente apoyaremos la inscripción.
Thank you very much. Uganda, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, this heritage property, which is located in northern Italy in a spectacular sequence of hills, is a melting pot of tasty Italian wines. The steep gradient of the host hills has dictated non-mechanized propagation of the vineyards by the wine growers since the 1800s. In other words, Mr. Chairman, the state part of Italy is presenting to us a viticulture landscape born out of unique interface between nature and man. For over centuries, Mr. Chairman, this landscape denotes the evolution of best custom-tailored land use practices spanning unique stabilization of the slopes, yet interspersed with forests, small woods, and rural settlements. Respectively, Mr. Chairman, the delegation of Uganda is satisfied with the draft decision to inscribe this property on the World Heritage List as an outstanding example of mixed human interaction with the environment, unique viticulture land use, and traditional human settlements as echoed by Criterion 5 of the Convention's operational guidelines. I congratulate the State Party of Italy and thank ICOMOS for the very wonderful presentation of this nomination. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Brazil, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's just a very brief intervention to congratulate the delegation of Italy for the very hard work done since the adoption of our decision last year in Panama concerning this site. I think that we are facing a case, a very successful case of a referral, which led the country to work in close coordination with the advisory bodies, who today present, the advisory bodies present a very successful, a very positive report based on the work done by the country. So I would very much like to congratulate Italy on this beautiful nomination. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Azerbaijan, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think there is no reason to speak about the value of the site, as it speaks for itself, and it is really very visible from this photo. It's exceptional cultural landscape where we can see a testimony of interaction, the human interaction with the environment and with the nature. And of course, we congratulate the State Party in Italy for this work, and as it is already expressed by colleagues, after the referral decision in Bahrain, their work and the cooperation with the ICOMOS, and this really dialogue and the engagement with the ICOMOS makes this nomination today is successful. So we congratulate wholeheartedly the Italy for this and announce it's Prosecco time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hungary.
Dear Chairperson, thank you very much for giving me the floor. Only to be short, I would like to join to the previous speakers. First of all, to Brazil, because I see that we have, on the one side, a very successful, a good nomination, which could be evaluated by ICOMOS successfully and with a proposal to be for inscription. And secondly, because I can remember to the discussion held about this nomination in the previous year in Panama. And let me refer that the decision of referral has its meaning exactly like in this case, because it is the meaning and it is the significance of referral to give the possibility to a state party to enhance and corroborate its nomination and to return with the new revised nomination back And then the advisory body gives the possibility and gives a good proposal for the inscription. So let me congratulate Italy, and thanks for ICOMOS for the evaluation.
Thank you very much. China, please.
Thank you, Chair. China wishes to join the previous speakers in congratulating Italy for a very successful nomination and inscription. We wish to use this opportunity also to commend the wonderful job ICOMOS has done. We all remember the last year it was the case when encountered the difficulties, and then we noted with great satisfaction that the ICOMOS and Italy worked together. So it is a classical example of close collaboration between advisory body and the state parties involved in solving a case and presenting a beautiful property. And we congratulate the state party of Italy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Guatemala, please.
Gracias, señor presidente. Nos unimos a las palabras de otros miembros del comité que nos han antecedido. El valor universal excepcional del sitio es una realidad y se reconoce como un ejemplo de la relación a largo plazo entre la sociedad y la naturaleza. Durante la anterior reunión del comité, Guatemala respaldó la decisión de devolver el expediente y hoy tenemos una nominación que cumple con los requisitos para este reconocimiento. Queremos felicitar al Estado parte por las medidas implementadas para atender las recomendaciones relacionadas con la nominación y estar a punto de conseguir la inscripción de un nuevo sitio en la lista de Patrimonio Mundial. Gracias.
Thank you very much. We have one non-governmental organization which wanted to make intervention. Please, you are welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On behalf of the Pesticide Action Network Italy and World Heritage Watch, I kindly urge you not to inscribe Prosecco Hills as a World Heritage. The nomination of Prosecco is highly contentious in the region. Hazardous pesticides are intensely used over the entire vineyard areas, both urban and rural. They have already proven adverse effects on the health of the local population and the quality of life in the region. People suffer from them day by day. For years, citizens of the Prosecco region have been strongly protesting against the nomination. Local residents, together with numerous organizations, have been organizing marches, petitions, and sit-in protests demanding to stop the process of inscription until the use of hazardous pesticides is stopped and the well-being and health of habitants are ensured. Most recently, on the 28th of June, when a group of residents organized a sit-in in front of the UNESCO building in Venice. Unfortunately, UNESCO has not yet developed procedures for the management and control of the use of synthetic pesticides, despite having them declared as a threat as early as 1972, but also in 3 other official UNESCO documents. The nomination of Prosecco has revealed the urgency that the committee should adopt a policy document that the World Heritage status is incompatible with the use of toxic pesticides, and that World Heritage properties and their buffer zones must be free from their use, or at least provide a scheme for a progressive ban whose implementation is monitored by UNESCO. Do you really want to pass on to future generations a model of a polluting industrialized monoculture as a world cultural heritage, where its residents suffer from its effects and continuously fight for a change? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. We will take note for our documents. So, as far as I understand, there are no other comments from the committee members. No. Should we don't have any additional draft?
No amendments.
Okay, so as far as there is no another amendments and additions to the draft, I propose to approve the document in common. Therefore, declare decision 43.8b.37 adopted as amended. Our sincere congratulations to Italy, and you are welcome to make your intervention on behalf of the State Party. Welcome.
Honorable President, my sincere gratitude to the government of Azerbaijan for organizing the current session of the committee and for its gracious hospitality. I would like to thank the committee members and all the states representatives for the decision to approve this inscription. This confirms the global consideration for my country's outstanding natural and cultural heritage, as well as the commitment of the Italian authorities in favor of the UNESCO. This is a great recognition for Italy and for the Veneto region that has been able to value the extraordinary scenic qualities and the traditional features of a distinctive cultural landscape of exceptional global value. This authentic landscape is the expression of an agricultural mosaic unique in the world, the result of the hard and passionate work of men and women, always pursued in a sustainable and lasting manner. Looking forward, we have therefore as even more exciting challenges in terms of preserving, protecting, and managing the specific and traditional attributes of the attractive territories as a universal heritage to be transmitted to the future generation for the benefit of mankind. Finally, I wish to express gratitude to all those who believed and contributed to the realization of this wonderful project, which we consider as a starting point to the future. It will be essential to continue with the same efforts and dedication in order to fully exploit the potential of the Prosecco hills of Conigliano and Valdobbiadene. In this regard, I am pleased to give the floor to the President and friend of the Veneto region, Luca Zaia, accompanied by Undersecretaries Picchi and Borgonzoni. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. There are so many people I would like to thank today. First of all, UNESCO, the President of the World Heritage Committee and all its members, the President of ICOMOS and its staff, the Scientific Committee, the Italian government with me today are my friend, Agriculture Minister, Mr. Centinaio, and the people, the farmers and the families that live in the wonderful area of the Prosecco Hills. I'm really enthusiastic about the inclusion of the Prosecco Hills in the UNESCO list of World Heritage Sites. This inclusion makes us more responsible towards our territory, which is now part of the entire world's heritage. Our commitment now is to preserve the exceptional site for our future generations. After 10 years of hard work, we can finally celebrate a unique moment in which we feel really proud for this achievement and for enjoying the UNESCO World. The Prosecco Hills perfectly represent an outstanding example of traditional human settlement and the land use representative of a specific culture resulting from human interaction with the environment. From now on, our aim is to do our best to obtain the most fruitful results from the UNESCO designation. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and once more, congratulations on behalf of all members of the committee to the State Party of Italy. Now we proceed to the next nomination, which is done under the number 8B.38. It is connected with the 20th century architecture of Frank Lloyd Wright from United States of America. And before going to presentation, I would like to ask Mr. Balzano to give some clarification.
Thank you, Chair. We received a fatal error notification concerning the evaluation of the nomination for the 20th century architecture of Lloyd Wright, and it's on page 124 of the English version of document in Fate before, and on page 65 of the French version. And this notification has also some impacts on the proposed statement of OUV. Thank you.
Please, ICOMOS, you are welcome.
Thank you, Chair. The ICOMOS evaluation can be found at page 23 of the English version and page 22 of the French version of document 43-com-inf 8B1 ad. This nomination was first examined by the World Heritage Committee at its 40th session. The nomination was referred back to allow the state party to redefine the rationale for a series that might have the potential to justify outstanding universal value, enhance management, and to revise boundaries and buffer zones to provide enhanced protection. At the request of the state party, an ICOMOS advisory process was carried out in two phases, in 2016 to 2017 and then in 2018. The outcomes of this process and ICOMOS recommendations have been taken into account by the state party and incorporated in the revised version of the nomination dossier. The nominated property focuses upon the influence of the work of the American architect Frank Lloyd Wright. The qualities of what is known as organic architecture, developed by Wright, include the open plan, the blurring between exterior and interior, the new uses of materials and technologies, and the explicit responses to the suburban and natural settings of the various buildings. These have been acknowledged as pivotal in the development of modern architectural design in the 20th century. The nominated property includes a series of 8 buildings designed and built over the first half of the 20th century. Each component has specific characteristics representing new solutions to the needs for housing, for worship, work, education, and leisure. The diversity of functions, scale, and setting of the components fully illustrate the architectural principles of organic architecture. ICOMOS considers that the methodology for the comparative analysis is adequate, so too the selected movements and bodies of works corresponding to the same period as the nominated series. ICOMOS considers that the state party succeeds in demonstrating how the nominated series is exceptional related to the influence of Wright's work over the first decade of the century. ICOMOS is satisfied regarding the justification of the selection of components for the series and encourages the possible future extension of the series. ICOMOS considers that the property satisfies criterion 2 regarding the influence of Wright's architecture in the USA and other countries that changed architecture on a global scale during the first half of the 20th century. The 8 components illustrate different aspects of Wright's new approach to architecture, consciously developed for an American context. The resulting buildings, however, were in fact suited to modern life in many countries, and in their fusion of spirit and form, they evoked emotional responses that were universal in their appeal. Reacting against prevailing styles in the United States, this approach took advantage of new materials and technologies, but was also inspired by principles of the natural world and was nurtured by other cultures and eras. These innovative ideas and the resulting unified architectural works were noted in European architectural and critical circles early in the century and influenced several of the trends and architects of the European modern movement in architecture. The influence of Wright's works is also noticeable in the work of some architects outside of Europe. The boundaries and buffer zones for each of the components are generally adequate, but the state party should consider extending the boundary of Taliesin and the buffer zone of the Roby House. Despite some issues related to the authenticity of materials and substance, ICOMOS considers that the requirements of integrity and authenticity have been met for the whole series. The overall state of conservation of the components of the series is very good. The main factors affecting the property are development pressures and natural disasters. The protective instruments are adequate for each of the components of the serial property. ICOMOS considers that the coordinated management of the serial property through the existing council is acceptable, but its advisory functions should be reinforced. For individual components, the elaboration of management plans, summarising existing conservation and management instruments and including risk management, could contribute to a more appropriate approach to management. The current monitoring indicators are adequate, but do not clearly relate to the attributes that convey the outstanding universal value, and accordingly, they should be augmented. ICOMOS therefore recommends the property for inscription in the World Heritage List on the grounds of Criterion 2, and the draft decision with additional recommendations can be found at page 3 of the working document WHC 1943.com 8B add. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for this presentation. May I ask honourable delegates for their comments? Tunisia, please, then Uganda.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. La Tunisie voudrait tout d'abord remercier ICOMOS pour le rapport et l'État partie de nous avoir fourni un très beau dossier qui est au cœur de la dynamique de l'évolution des villes au XXe siècle et à travers l'œuvre d'un architecte internationalement reconnu. Je crois que la recommandation d'inscription est tout à fait la bienvenue. En tout état de cause, la Tunisie la soutient et que par cette inscription, on vient étoffer un aspect extrêmement intéressant de notre liste. Après Le Corbusier, après Gaudi, voici une autre grande page de l'histoire de l'architecture moderne qui prend sa place et avec une reconnaissance internationale. On souhaite renouveler nos remerciements pour l'État partie d'avoir proposé un dossier de cette qualité et de dire à nos amis des États-Unis qui sont bien entendu chez eux et qu'on souhaite qu'ils reviennent très tôt dans la grande famille de l'UNESCO. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. Uganda, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. This serial nomination of 8 architectural masterpieces spread in 6 states across the United States of America exemplifies human ingenuity born by the much celebrated architect Frank Lloyd Wright. This great architect, who would have been 152 this year, bequeathed to the world not only the masterpieces of phenomenal architecture, but also poetry in stone. Customary as it was for him to adopt inspirations from nature and varied global cultures, Frank Lloyd Wright designed these buildings to break free of traditional forms and facilitate modern life. It is no wonder that the components of buildings of this serial nomination, selected from an even larger population of his buildings, have over the years greatly influenced the field of architecture and design throughout the world and continue to do so to this day. Mr. Chairman, in the eyes of the Ugandan delegation, there is no better way of celebrating such phenomenal human achievement than enlisting this set of buildings on the World Heritage List. I congratulate the State Party of USA. I also thank ICOMOS for the wonderful representation and recommendations of this nomination. I rest my case, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Spain, please.
Gracias, señor presidente. Estando ya reconocidas las obras de Mies van der Rohe, de Walter Gropius, de Bauhaus y de Barragán, Le Corbusier, Victor o Gaudí, la dilatada obra de arquitectura representativa de lo mejor del patrimonio cultural y contemporáneo del siglo XX entendemos que es una aportación importante y queremos felicitar por ello a Estados Unidos de América por esta importante contribución al patrimonio del siglo XX y su transmisión generacional, y entendemos, como bien apunta ICOMOS, a la necesidad de extender aún más la obra del gran maestro americano. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. Kuwait, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We remember when we referred this nomination back in 2016 to do more justice to the outstanding work of Lloyd Wright. We believe that this moment has just come. I personally remember one of the team members who worked on this nomination, who told me that she got exhausted and put all of her efforts and energy into this file. But today we shall tell her that we are celebrating the fruits of her exhaustion and efforts. And thus we would like to congratulate the State Party for this commendable progress and the flourishing achievement. Welcome to the World Heritage List.
Thank you very much. Bosnia, please.
Adding work of Lloyd Wright on the World Heritage List is giving a new dimension to this beautiful architecture, what represents the fundament of architectural education in all schools all over the world. We congratulate the United States to come back with this file. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Azerbaijan, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. First of all, I would like to say thanks a lot to evaluation and report of ICOMOS, and many thanks for State Party for preparing this beautiful nomination this year, and thanks for them for preservation of the right design and the construction until now. It's really the great design and great buildings. Personally, I am growing up as a student with the right design, and maybe in the first part of the 20th century, it was a quite brave design and construction, and believe me, it's until now the brave construction. I would like again to express many thanks to State Party and hope the next nomination this year will be the Frank Jarvis Design and Construction. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Are there any other interventions? Maybe there are some objections to the draft decision proposed by ICOMOS. No objections. Rapporteur, do we have any amendments?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. No amendments received.
Thank you very much. As soon as it's like that, so I'd like to propose to approve the decision in whole, and therefore I declare decision 43-8B.38 adopted as amended. Our sincere congratulations to the State Party of the United States of America, and I'm gladly present the floor on behalf of the State Party. Please, Ambassador, you're welcome.
Thank you. Chairperson Garayev, Director Russler, distinguished members of the committee, the United States is truly honored by the decision today to inscribe these masterworks of Frank Lloyd Wright. We thank ICOMOS, the World Heritage Committee, and our Azerbaijani hosts. The work of Frank Lloyd Wright has been on our tentative list in some form since 1982. Today's inscription is the culmination of many, many years of work by the stewards of these sites, the Frank Lloyd Wright Building Conservancy and our National Park Service, both of which are represented here today. We are particularly proud that this inscription is the first for modern architecture in the United States. This inscription underlines our commitment that these buildings will stand as treasured monuments for succeeding generations. We also look forward to continuing to work with partners and the international community in promoting the importance of World Heritage. It's now my pleasure to pass the microphone to Linda Wagoner, Director Emerita of Fallingwater, representing the Frank Lloyd Wright Building Conservancy.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. Chairman Garayev and Director Roessler, distinguished members of the committee. I can't begin to express how delighted all of us are who worked on this nomination with this tremendous honor. We thank the World Heritage Committee for their favorable decision, ICOMOS for their thoughtful assistance in revising the nomination, and our own National Park Service for their encouragement and guidance. It is our hope that the inclusion of these works by Frank Lloyd Wright on the World Heritage List will result in an even greater appreciation for Wright's work. I invite everyone to come and visit these remarkable sites, because experiencing them in person is really the only way to truly understand them. Even the best photographs do not do them justice. I think that if you do visit, you will come to share my conviction that without Frank Lloyd Wright, architecture today would be very different indeed. Thank you.
Thank you, and we, on behalf of all members of the committee, cordially invites the United States for this achievement. Thank you very much. And now we proceed to the next item of our agenda. The item 8B.40, the colonial Transisthmian route of Panama. No, sorry, I'm wrong. One list, I went forward. It's Jamaica. So, sorry, then item 8B.39, the sunken city of Port Royal, a relic and continuing cultural landscape. Mr. Balzama, can you give us clarification on this item?
Thank you, Chair. We received a factual error notification concerning the nomination of the sunken city of Port Royal, a relic and continuing cultural landscape, and this is to be found on page 81 of both English and French version of document INF 8B4. Thank you.
Thank you very much. ICOMOS, you are welcome to give the presentation.
Thank you, Chair. Port Royal was established in 1656, shortly after the occupation of Jamaica by England. Within a few years, it became one of the wealthiest and most significant port cities of the British Empire. But less than 50 years later, in 1692, a severe earthquake left parts of the town submerged underwater. What survives are the underwater remains of the sunken portion of the town and, on the surviving terrestrial portion, sites and structures that testify to later periods of its evolution. The World Heritage Committee examined the nomination of Port Royal, Jamaica, at its 12th session in 1988. At that time, the nomination consisted of the terrestrial area of the property only. In its evaluation report, ICOMOS recommended that the property should not be inscribed on the World Heritage List, and the committee agreed. This is thus a new nomination that covers both the terrestrial part and the submerged part of the town. Located on a long sand spit that marks the entrance to Kingston Bay, a large natural harbour, the town is prone to severe natural disasters, which have played a significant role in its evolution. Although from the 18th century until 1905, Port Royal was an English naval base and one of the richest cities of the region, little has survived above ground to reflect this wealth and influence, as in 1951, Hurricane Charlie swept through, leaving only a few buildings. The nominated site encompasses the submerged part of the city, together with what remains on the terrestrial part, within the 17th century boundaries of the town. and as you can see, the site is enclosed by a large buffer zone. The shaded area in this map represents the submerged part of the city. The sites marked red are protected structures, those in pink are of modern construction. The earthquake of 1692 not only submerged part of the city, but reshaped and extended the coastline to the south and east. Remarkably, the submerged part of the city seems to have sunk gently, leaving its structure intact with amazingly little distortion. So far, 2 sections of the submerged site have been excavated, revealing beside the street pattern remains of pavements, houses, 3 forts, a tavern, a warehouse, markets, and walls. These archaeological investigations have provided a remarkably complete illustration of part of a 17th century English urban settlement. Documentation reveals that the urban layout was established by fire master Nicholas Keene, and its plan corresponds closely to the London post-fire building regulations of 1667. The numerous artifacts recovered further illuminate the town's wealth and its trading connections. Additional information provided by the State Party has allowed a more complete understanding of what survives above ground from the 17th century, such as street patterns which align with what survives in the sunken part of the town, as well as brick and stone walls around the historic district. The following slides illustrate what survives above ground in the town. This is Fort Charles, constructed in 1655 as part of a network of forts, but only it was still standing after the 1692 earthquake. The former jail on the left, St. Peter's Church, and the coal wharf below in the buffer zone are 18th century structures. And these are 19th century buildings, Admiralty House, built from the 1880s, and above it, the Naval Hospital. The historical importance of Port Royal within the region is unquestionable, but the limited number of structures that remain to reflect that history are not exceptional. Of much more significance are the consequences of the 1692 earthquake for the way it produced an exceptional situation where part of the town was submerged, constituting a valuable testimony of a significant part of a 17th century English colonial town in the Americas at the first stage of its evolution, and where the 17th century plan also survives above ground. ICOMOS considers that the nomination should be refocused on these 17th century aspects as a relic landscape within the original town boundaries. Within the buffer zone next to the property, there is a proposal to construct a floating pier and a cruise ship terminal on the site of the coal wharf. The impact assessments so far undertaken have not adequately assessed the potential impacts on the property, and particularly the full impact of cruise ship movements. ICOMOS does not consider that the property in its current form justifies outstanding universal value on the basis of a combination of underwater archaeology and a continuing cultural landscape of military and naval importance that is said to constitute 17th century maritime exploits, an 18th century dockyard, and a 19th century coaling wharf. We do not consider that criteria 3 and 5 can be justified, nor 6, which was put forward to reflect the transatlantic slave trade connections. But we do consider that the property could have the potential to meet criterion 4 in relation to the pre-1692 archaeological remains only and as a relic cultural landscape. Protection needs to be strengthened for the above-ground archaeological deposits, and the management plan needs to be fully implemented, as do necessary conservation measures. In conclusion, Chair, ICOMOS recommends that the examination of the nomination of the sunken city of Port Royal, a relict and continuing cultural landscape, Jamaica, to the World Heritage List should be deferred in order to allow the State Party, with the advice of ICOMOS and the World Heritage Centre, if requested, to consider the site as a single entity and a relict archaeological landscape, which includes all the attributes related to 17th century archaeological vestiges, both underwater and terrestrial, of the town destroyed by the 1692 earthquake, and to revise the justification of outstanding universal value accordingly and clearly define the attributes particularly in the terrestrial part. We've also made further recommendations which are set out in your papers, but would like to highlight the request to suspend work on the proposed cruise ship pier until a detailed heritage impact assessment has been undertaken and submitted for review. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. St. Kitts and Nevis, please.
Thank you, Chair. St. Kitts and Nevis recognizes the outstanding value of the sunken city of Port Royal, a relict and continuing cultural landscape. The site was devastated by an earthquake in 1692, which produced the archaeological vestiges of Port Royal that is known today. The 17th century property located on the land and water is the only of its kind in the Caribbean and an excellently preserved testament to an English settlement in the Americas over this period. We note that ICOMOS considers the terrestrial and submerged portions of the site to be an unrivaled illustration of an English port town, which has the potential to demonstrate outstanding universal value, and we commend Jamaica for the submission of this very significant site. We, however, note the concerns raised by ICOMOS of boundaries, unjustified OUV, and the fulsome expansion of an HIA for the proposed development of the site. The state party has indicated their acceptance of the recommendation of ICOMOS and their commitment to work through the deferral to adequately address the concerns raised and to resubmit a stronger nomination in future. St. Kitts and Nevis therefore commends Jamaica for willingly engaging the process to facilitate the preparation of a nomination that, once in line with the recommendations of ICOMOS, has the potential to be inscribed. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Australia, please.
Thank you, Chair. With St Kitts and Nevis, we also consider that the archaeological vestiges at this site to be an extraordinary and internationally significant example of underwater cultural heritage. There are currently very few underwater heritage places on the World Heritage List. Port Royal, with its famous history and its outstanding preservation of the submerged pre-1692 town, clearly has great potential to demonstrate OUV under Criterion 4. And a successful nomination will address several gaps on the World Heritage List, not only in underwater heritage, but also in the representation of the Caribbean region and the SIDS on the World Heritage List. We consider that the ICOMOS recommendation for deferral is appropriate, given that the potential OUV under Criterion 4 has not been clearly defined and the attributes that hold the potential OUV need to be clarified and included in revised boundaries. We agree with ICOMOS that refocusing the nomination on as a relic archaeological landscape from the pre-1692 town is appropriate. The underwater heritage is extremely fragile and a complex heritage impact assessment is required for the entire site prior to the development of the proposed floating pier and the use of the area or adjacent areas by cruise ships and other large vessels. In our discussions with the state party, they have indicated that in this regard they would like advice in relation to the requirements for heritage impact assessment for underwater cultural heritage, and in response, when we come to it, we would like to propose a small amendment to the draft decision. And finally, Chair, there is considerable expert work that has been recommended to the state party of Jamaica for revision of the nomination dossier, and we would like to hear from the state party in relation to their capacities to implement these recommendations. Thank you.
Cuba, please.
Gracias, señor presidente. Las delegaciones que me han precedido han fundamentado muy bien el valor y la singularidad de este sitio, que sin duda en el Caribe lo acogemos como un sitio único. También apreciamos la valoración que ha sabido hacer el órgano consultivo, tanto con relación a las potencialidades en términos de valor universal excepcional, como los señalamientos en términos de mejorar esta nominación para un futuro análisis. Sin embargo, consideramos que el Estado parte se ha tomado muy en serio desde los inicios lograr un dossier sólido y en tal sentido ha venido trabajando, por lo que nos gustaría que se le diera la palabra al Estado parte para que nos explicara con relación a esas acciones en las cuales ya ha venido trabajando en un sitio que articula perfectamente los objetivos de esta convención con la de patrimonio cultural subacuático, que es tan importante para nuestra región. Gracias.
Thank you very much. Norway, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Norway supports the draft decision and commends the State Party of Jamaica for accepting the deferral. Norway expects the State Party to follow up on the given recommendations, and we do hope to see a revised, evaluated nomination during our time in this committee. We also, Mr. Chair, would like to hear from the State Party a statement on their further work with the nomination. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Guatemala, please.
Gracias, señor presidente. Es necesario para Guatemala valorar el esfuerzo realizado por el Estado parte de Jamaica en la preparación de esta nominación y agradecemos al órgano consultivo por el análisis que ha realizado. Se reconocen varias circunstancias identificadas con relación a la nominación, a la propiedad y especialmente sobre el sistema de gestión, por lo que instamos al Estado parte para que en diálogo con ICOMOS y el Centro de Patrimonio Mundial se evalúe la nominación para presentarla nuevamente ante el comité. Una vez atendidas las recomendaciones que se integran en el proyecto de decisión, esperamos que en un futuro próximo, ojalá que mientras Guatemala aún forma parte de este comité, se pueda examinar la nominación revisada para enriquecer la lista del patrimonio mundial, incluyendo este importante sitio de relación histórica para Jamaica a nivel local, pero con relación a la historia global del siglo XVII. Es necesario indicar que el sitio se ubica temática y geográficamente en uno de los ámbitos menos representados en la lista, por lo que su inscripción sería necesaria lo más pronto posible en el marco del cumplimiento de la estrategia global. También apoyamos las solicitudes realizadas por otros miembros del comité para ofrecer la palabra al Estado parte. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. China, please.
Thank you, Chair. China appreciates the State Party submitted a very special heritage which combines the above-ground and underwater remains of two different historical periods. China agrees with the ICMOS expert opinion that the existing urban planning and architectural remains have the potential outstanding universal value, as it witnesses the important stage in the history of Jamaica and the British colony, and justifies the criterion for. At the same time, China is aware of the difficulties in protecting, managing, and presenting the underwater heritage. China supports the State Party to strengthen research on this complex heritage in accordance with the professional recommendations of ICMOS for better protection and management. China appreciates that the State Party accepts the recommendation of ICMOS. Thank you.
Thank you very much, China. Spain, please.
Gracias, presidente. España, como no podía ser menos, acoge con gran satisfacción esta candidatura de Patrimonio Cultural Subacuático. Se trataría de la primera candidatura de Patrimonio Cultural Subacuático y, de alguna manera, es un símbolo de esa relación que siempre hablamos de todas las convenciones, ¿no? Ya vemos que la Convención de Patrimonio Mundial, los aspectos materiales e inmateriales, lo hemos visto en muchas de las candidaturas que hemos aprobado, pero la relación entre el patrimonio mundial y el patrimonio subacuático sería por primera vez reflejado en esta hermosa candidatura. En ese sentido, queremos felicitar al Estado porque realmente es un reto y por la vulnerabilidad que sabemos que tiene el patrimonio sumergido, lo sabemos todos. Y, por tanto, animamos, la verdad, que siga el órgano de evaluación y ICOMOS ayudando al Estado a que finalmente podamos, en un momento dado, aprobar esta candidatura y, en ese sentido, aprobamos el proyecto de decisión. Gracias.
Thank you very much, Spain. Brazil, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Brazil would like to commend Jamaica for proposing this property and the way it redefined the nominated property compared to the original nomination back in 1988. We also would like to strongly commend Jamaica for not challenging ICOMOS recommendations and in its disposition to accept the deferral and work in collaboration with ICOMOS to present a revised dossier with the recommendations that were proposed. We join the concern with regard to the developments in the properties area, and we encourage the state party to take the proper heritage impact assessment of the developments they have in mind. And to conclude, Mr. Chairman, we would like to also encourage the state party not to drop criteria 6 from this nomination and to further develop research concerning its relation to the slave trade. And we would be most willing to cooperate in that regard. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So there is no other proposal from the committee members, and as far as I know, there is no any. Is there any? Please welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As flagged from the floor by Australia, there's a small amendment, well, an additional amendment to the decision. That's for a new paragraph 5 requesting a mission. And I think we'll just be perhaps taking that from the floor or typing the very last-minute text message I got. It might be recommends the state party rather than request. And I'll just read that one out. Proposed by Australia to read, recommends the state party to invite an ICOMOS advisory mission to the property to provide advice in relation to heritage impact assessments for underwater cultural heritage.
Are there any other amendments or objections against this amendment? I don't see any. So we can... Australia, please.
Chair, will we be able to hear from the state party as requested by several of the committee members?
Of course, we are going to give the floor to the state party. Now, welcome the state party, Jamaica.
Thank you, Chair, for allowing Jamaica the floor. First, as Jamaica is taking the floor for the first time, let me congratulate you on your leadership of the session. And Jamaica also expresses our sincere thanks to the Republic of Azerbaijan for its wonderful hospitality during this meeting. Jamaica thanks the World Heritage Secretariat and ICOMOS for the opportunities provided for dialogue as we strive towards adding our cherished Port Royal to the World Heritage List. The government of Jamaica believes that the site of the sunken city of Port Royal, a relic and continuing cultural landscape, has outstanding universal value, a belief also held by ICOMOS, and recognizes that this terrestrial and marine 17th century site must be protected for all humanity. Jamaica is therefore fully committed to the preservation of this site and will continue to work assiduously in this regard. Mr. Chair, Jamaica notes and accepts the recommendation of a deferred nomination, the guidance provided by ICOMOS, which will result in a stronger nomination file that will have a better opportunity of being inscribed in the future. Activities related to an expanded heritage impact assessment will be addressed through dialogue with ICOMOS and the World Heritage Center. we express our appreciation to the committee members for their encouraging words, and in particular, Sister Islands, St. Kitts and Nevis, and Cuba. Special thanks to Australia, who have offered advice towards our next steps, and to Brazil as well. Jamaica reaffirms its commitment to the preservation of our cultural and natural heritage, and will work with the ICOMOS and the World Heritage Center towards a nomination file that effectively represents the significant attributes of the sunken city of Port Royal. Thank you.
Thank you very much for such an approach, and we believe that soon this file will be reconsidered and we will gladly have a better news. So if the committee members don't mind, we will approve the decision as proposed in this last version with the amendments from Australia. No objections? Therefore, I declare document 43-8B39 adopted. Now we move to the item 8B40, connected with Panama. So may I ask ICOMOS to make presentation of the site?
Thank you, Chairperson. The ICOMOS evaluation of this nomination can be found in document INF 8B1 on page 374 of the English version and page 76 of the French version. Next slide, please. This is the first of 3 proposed stages to extend and connect 2 existing World Heritage properties, the archaeological site of Panama Viejo and Historic District of Panama on the Pacific coast, and the fortifications on the Caribbean side of Panama, Portobelo San Lorenzo. The stage proposal adds 2 historical routes that cross the Isthmus of Panama, the Camino de Cruces and the Camino Real, which provided interchange between the Caribbean and the Pacific Ocean. The route was a significant part of the Intercontinental Royal Road and the Spanish colonial system in the Americas from the 16th century. This nomination has a complex background, which is summarised in the ICOMOS report. State of conservation reports for the archaeological site of Panama Viejo and Historic District of Panama have been considered by the World Heritage Committee between 2008 and 2017. A high-level reactive monitoring mission took place in 2013. In 2013 and 2016, the World Heritage Committee requested that the state party submit a significant boundary modification by 1st February 2018, and that an absence of the implementation of this request would result in the property being deleted from the World Heritage List at this current session. A different proposed boundary modification to the Historic District of Panama was not approved by the World Heritage Committee in 2016. In 2017, the state party submitted the colonial Transisthmian route of Panama in its tentative list, and an ICOMOS advisory process was completed. The current proposal includes significant modifications to the boundary, rationale for inscription, criteria, and name of the archaeological site of Panama Viejo and Historic District of Panama in accordance with paragraphs 165, 166, and 167 of the operational guidelines. According to paragraph 139, serial nominations may be submitted for evaluation over several nomination cycles, provided that the first property nominated is of outstanding universal value in its own right. The 2 routes cross the isthmus between the Caribbean and the Pacific Ocean, the Camino de Cruces, which is the focus of the current stage, and the Camino Real, which is planned for Stage 2. Stage 3 will include the 2 fortifications on the Caribbean side of Panama, Portobello, San Lorenzo, once they are able to be removed from the World Heritage list of World Heritage in danger, according to decision 43-7A50 taken at this session. This first stage has 5 components, 3 sections of the Camino de Cruces, and 2 components which are the already inscribed World Heritage Property of the Archaeological Site of Panama Viejo and Historic District of Panama, both on the Pacific coast. The 3-stage proposal includes evidence of the routes through fluvial and terrestrial environments, historic towns, archaeological sites, and the defences needed to protect the route and the immense multi-directional flows of goods and people. The archaeological site of Panama Viejo was the earliest settlement on the Pacific coast, which was moved to present-day Panama City in the 17th century. Panama City's historic district is the oldest continuously occupied European city on the Pacific coast of the Americas. The fluvial section of the Camino de Cruces includes the water route from the Caribbean coast to the start of the terrestrial route at Venta de Cruces. The main terrestrial section of the Camino de Cruces is over 20 kilometres long, passing through mountain areas and thick vegetation. There is one final section of the route proposed, which nears the semi-urban outskirts of Panama City. This slide shows the water section of the Camino de Cruces, and the next 2 slides show some of the physical evidence of the terrestrial route. The 2 routes were used by Spain until the mid-18th century. The Camino de Cruces is the direct antecedent of the 19th century Panama Railroad and the Panama Canal, which opened in 1914. ICMOS considers that the comparative analysis supports the proposal to nominate Panama's Transisthmian routes. The proposed heritage route has potential to demonstrate criteria 2 and 4 once a number of key issues with integrity and authenticity, protection and management have been addressed. ICMOS does not see potential for the other criteria proposed by the state party, namely 5 and 6. As detailed in the State of Conservation reports, new developments and deterioration of elements have affected the authenticity and integrity of the 2 existing inscribed components, which are considered still vulnerable and are continuing to be addressed by the state party. The proposed component boundaries are potentially appropriate, although ICMOS has questioned several aspects warranting further research. There are proposed arrangements for protection and management system that seem promising. However, they have yet to be effectively implemented, and the needed coordination is just beginning. There are many open questions which have been left to future stages. The State Party has responded to the decisions of the World Heritage Committee, the options proposed by the 2013 High-Level Reactive Monitoring Mission, and the 2017 ICMOS advisory process. The proposal presents an entirely different rationale for inscription, oriented around the heritage routes that cross the isthmus. ICMOS considers this to be a promising way forward. However, in a staged nomination process, the first stage must meet the requirements for outstanding universal value. In the view of ICMOS, this has clearly not yet been achieved. ICMOS also has concerns about the ambitious time frame outlined by the State Party, especially given that the 2 existing World Heritage properties involved also need attention and resources. Accordingly, ICMOS recommends that the proposed extension, including changes to the boundary, rationale for inscription, criteria and name of the property, be deferred. This will enable the State Party to present a revised Stage 1 that can meet the requirements for outstanding universal value and to establish an effective management system for the serial property. Deferral will also enable the State Party to continue to improve the state of conservation of the 2 existing World Heritage properties as outlined in previous committee decisions. Because of the need to maintain momentum, a suggested timeframe for the resubmission of Stage 1 is proposed in the draft decision. A number of further recommendations have been provided to assist the long-term conservation of the property. These should be seen as complementing the decisions that this committee has already taken at this session in 43 COM 7A 50 and 43 COM 7B 101. And that's the end of the presentation. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you very much. Are there any comments on this matter? Norway, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Norway supports the draft decision as there are still many questions to be answered and processes to be completed in this complex case. Further, we would like to commend Panama for accepting the nomination being deferred back to them, and thus for taking into serious consideration the tasks identified in the draft decision, as well as respecting the World Heritage Convention. Thank you.
Guatemala, please.
Gracias, señor presidente. Agradecemos la nominación presentada por Panamá y el análisis realizado por ICOMOS sobre esta propuesta. Esta es una de las pocas nominaciones de la región de Latinoamérica y el Caribe, por lo que felicitamos al Estado parte por el esfuerzo realizado, pero sobre todo por darnos la oportunidad de examinar esta interesante nominación que viene a incrementar nuestro acervo histórico de las rutas coloniales de América. Entendemos que el paso de seres humanos por el territorio de Panamá empezó por los movimientos prehistóricos, seguidos por las rutas coloniales, luego el ferrocarril transoceánico en el siglo XIX y actualmente se ve complementado por el Canal de Panamá, por lo que la nominación se relaciona con dinámicas globales en un momento particular. Estamos seguros que con la ayuda de ICOMOS y los esfuerzos del Estado parte veremos inscrita la nominación en la lista del Patrimonio Mundial en un futuro muy próximo. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. Any other comments? If there is no other comments, maybe we will proceed to the adoption of the document. Do we have any amendments or changes?
No amendments, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. So we can proceed to the approval of the document in whole. I don't see any objections. So we declare the draft decision 43 COM 8B.40 adopted as amended. Thank you very much. Now I would like to give the floor to the State Party, representative of Panama. You are welcome.
Muchísimas gracias. Solamente quisiera hacer un recuento del tema de Panamá. Este trabajo empezó en el 2012 y a lo largo del tiempo al principio eran conflictos y discusiones, pero a partir del momento que, y voy a mencionar nombre y apellido, el arquitecto Alfredo Conti y la doctora Rosler fueron a Panamá y evaluaron lo que encontraron e hicieron las recomendaciones, la situación cambió dramáticamente y el Estado aparte empezó a tener una relación completa y directa con ICOMOS, la que fue construyendo el expediente que estamos encontrando en el día de hoy. Y yo quiero resaltar ese tema porque es importante el tema de los estados de conservación y el cumplimiento de las guías operacionales. Lo cierto es que hoy en día estamos trabajando en este dossier y no lo estamos objetando porque lo que ustedes ven en la pantalla es un tema que hemos estado trabajando juntos. Y aún falta, y la razón que falta en los comentarios que ustedes ven en la decisión también tiene que ver con algo que UNESCO tiene que tomar en consideración, tanto IUCN como ICOMOS, en que no todos los estados tienen iguales condiciones para poder enfrentar recomendaciones en corto tiempo. En pocas palabras, Panamá no tiene la cantidad de recursos que existen en otros países para poder cumplir tan rápido, tan poco. Y Esos temas hay que considerarlos para que uno pueda llegar eventualmente a cumplir con todas las recomendaciones y cumplir con hacer las nominaciones y sobre todo mantener el estado de conservación. Quiero también entonces agradecer a la doctora Rosler, a todo el equipo de IUCN, porque coincide algo también aquí hoy en día, y es que este es el último dossier que estamos viendo y también es mi último día en UNESCO. Termino luego de 7 años de estar trabajando en la UNESCO, representando a mi país, y veo como un dossier complicado y otros dossiers también del tema del patrimonio natural complicados han llegado hoy en día a mucho mejor estado de conservación y de relación con la UNESCO. Y así pronostico que va a continuar con nuestros futuros líderes hoy en día recién instalados en Panamá y con los técnicos que van a trabajar esto. Así que en general quiero agradecer a todo el personal, a don César, a don Mauro. Quisiera mencionar a todos los demás que ya saben que estamos aquí. Y a Tim Batman, que no lo veo. Pero un gran abrazo y hasta pronto. Los espero en Panamá.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. And on behalf of the committee members, we wish you good luck and successful work in your new position. Thank you very much for your involvement and active work in the UNESCO framework. Thank you. Now we move to the examination of the file which we decided to postpone until the working group will come to the solution with the draft decision. This is the document 8B.5, concerned with the Phayayen-Khao Forest Complex. And I would like to give the floor to Rapporteur to present us the new draft decision.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We've received quite an amended decision from the drafting group. The first 2 paragraphs would remain unamended. The third paragraph would read, noting the efforts of the State Party to address the matters identified by the committee at its 39th and 40th sessions. The fourth paragraph reads, taking note of the technical agreement reached by the States Parties of Thailand and Myanmar on the delineation of the boundary of the nominated area based on the technical meeting between the 2 concerned States Parties held in Bangkok on the 25th and 26th of April 2019. 5. Taking note of the progress made by the State Party on the adoption of legislation aimed at addressing the concerns of the rights and livelihoods of the local communities, including the Karen within the Khao Yai National Park. 6 then is referring, so refers the nomination of the Khao Yai Forest Complex Thailand back to the State Party in order to allow it to A. Revise the boundaries of the property based on agreement between the States Parties of Thailand and Myanmar. B. Prepare and submit a revised comparative analysis demonstrating that the reduced area of the nominated property would be sufficient to meet criterion 10, including the related conditions of integrity, protection and management. C. Demonstrate that all concerns have been resolved in full consultation with the local communities in accordance with paragraph 123 of the operational guidelines. 7. Encourages the ongoing dialogue between the State Party and the advisory body and recommends that the State Party invites the IUCN advisory mission to assist in the preparation of the additional information requested under paragraph 6. 8. Encourages the States Parties of Thailand and Myanmar to work in partnership on future biological connectivity opportunities and collaborative efforts on conservation between the nominated property and the proposed protected area in Myanmar in accordance with paragraph 6 above. And just you can see that the previous decision has been, deleted, really. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. As you know, this document was a result of the consultation during 2 days between the members of the working group, and they agreed to find such consensus which is presented to this draft decision. I think there is no need for any further comments because it is the work of the Tunisia, please.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Ce n'est pas un commentaire du texte qui est devant nous, mais la Tunisie ayant fait partie du groupe de rédaction, et nous sommes très heureux d'arriver à ce résultat, et je voudrais à l'occasion souligner l'esprit dans lequel cette rédaction a eu lieu et surtout la coopération qu'on a trouvée et la compréhension auprès de l'État partie. Je voulais à l'occasion les saluer et les en remercier.
We highly appreciate the spirit of the working group and the understanding and the common work done by the committee members in favor of the common decision. So, if there is no other comment, I propose to approve the document 8B.5 as delivered to the screen. Approved. Thank you. We have not finished the examination of all. We have now finished, sorry, all nominations. I suppose that we have still something. We will now proceed with the examination of the minor modifications to the boundaries. We have 13 files already inscribed in the UNESCO Heritage List. And you will find this document for the consideration in 8B.add. We will first examine the minor boundary modification of cultural properties. The alphabetic list is in front of you. This is Bolivia's plurinational state of Bolivia, city of Potosi, churches of Chiloé, Chile, Humberstone and Santa Laura Salpeterworks in Chile. One by one? No, I will leave the text, then will come. France, Arles, Roman and Romansk monuments. Germany, Garden Kingdom of Dessau-Wörlitz. Germany, Malburn Monastery Complex, Maya site of Copan, Honduras, Venice and its lagoon, Italy, Bryggen, Norway, University of Calibra, Alta and Sofia, Portugal, and Royal Domain of Dortninghol. So these are the sites which we're supposed to consider. Ikomos or Mr. Balsamo, the floor is yours. Or
for announce the yes, we have a factual error notification concerning the first minor boundary modification which we are examining, and it concerns the minor boundary modification of all Roman and Romanesque monuments, and this notification is to be found on page 126 of both the English and French version of document INFAID B4.
Thomas, you have the floor on this matter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. The ICOMOS evaluation of the minor boundary modification for ALS, Roman and Romanesque monuments can be found at page 46 of the English version and page 58 of the French version of document INF.8B1.add. The property was inscribed on the World Heritage List in 1981 on the basis of criterion 2 and 4 as a good example of the adaptation of an ancient city to medieval European civilization. It contains some impressive Roman monuments, the arena, the Roman theatre, and the cryptoporticus, as well as Romanesque monuments. In 2006, the State Party proposed the name to be changed to its actual name, and in 2011, as part of the retrospective inventory, the perimeter of the property was slightly modified. The present minor boundary modification concerned the establishment of the buffer zone for the property, which has been approved by the French state in 2018. A brief account of the rationale for the buffer zone mentioned the archaeological context, the urban development, project areas, and the preservation of OUV, as well as landscape consideration and consolidated historic viewpoints. The buffer zone is expected to be managed according to the local urban plan, which was approved in 2017, as well as through an architectural and heritage enhancement plan, which will be annexed to the urban plan. In the proposed buffer zone, in the immediate vicinity of the inscribed property, it is currently being built a 56-meter high tower designed by the architect Frank Gehry. The proportion of the structure, its new materials and dynamic forms, according to ICOMOS, interfere with the visual integrity of the historical skyline of the property, which, as underlined by the state party, did not change since the 17th century. The construction of the tower was not mentioned in the minor boundary modification proposal, and unfortunately, ICOMOS did not receive earlier information about this project. ICOMOS observes that criteria for the establishing the boundaries of the buffer zone remain unclear, as a robust justification for their delineation were not provided. ICOMOS considered that the buffer zone should include areas with high potential in terms of archaeological deposits. It should ensure that the historical skyline of Al is maintained, preventing from real estate large-scale development too close to the property. In conclusion, ICOMOS recommends that the examination of the proposed buffer zone be referred back to the state party in order to provide clear rationale regarding the deletion of the buffer zone, provide specific documentation and detail regarding building regulation and how they prevent new buildings, provide the heritage impact assessment undertaken for the Luma Als Tower, and deliver a visual impact analysis of this tower on the property and on its outstanding universal value. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Are there any comments on the modification? Can we approve the decision?
No amendments.
No amendments. So the item 8B43 can be adopted. Thank you very much. Now the item 8B44. Please, ICOMOS, you're welcome.
Thank you, Chair. The ICOMOS evaluation can be found at page 38 of the English version and page 50 of the French version of document 43-8B1 add. The Garden Kingdom of Dessau-Wörlitz is an exceptional example of a landscape design and planning from the age of the Enlightenment. The serial property was inscribed on the World Heritage List in 2000, but no buffer zone was defined for one component. The proposal involves minor changes to the property boundary to better align with the historic layout of the property, a correction to the size of the area of the property based on the latest available geographic information system, and the identification of a buffer zone for one component. The State Party proposes to reduce the area of the property from 514 hectares to 11,891 hectares, and to increase the buffer zone by 2,784 hectares. The proposed buffer zone surrounds the component on all sides and was defined in order to provide effective protection. The boundary change will not affect management of the property, and existing management arrangements will apply to the proposed buffer zone. The boundary change will have no impact regarding the legal protection of the property, and the proposed buffer zone also shares this protection. ICOMOS considers that the proposed modifications will contribute to the protection and management of the property. ICOMOS recommends that the proposed minor modification to the boundary and creation of a buffer zone for one component be approved. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Are there any comments on this item? No amendments?
We've received no amendments.
Thank you very much. Can we approve as it is submitted? Okay, then we'll approve item 8B 44 as amended. Thank you very much. Next one, 8B45. Please, ICOMOS.
Thank you again, Chair. The ICOMOS evaluation can be found at page 40 of the English version and page 52 of the French version of document 43com 8B1 add. Founded in 1147, the Cistercian Montbron Monastery is considered the most complete and best preserved medieval monastic complex north of the Alps. The property was inscribed on the World Heritage List in 1993, but no buffer zone was defined. The water management system of Montbron is an element of outstanding universal value. However, at the time of inscription, there was some uncertainty about which features were actually part of the monastery. The minor boundary modification relates to changes to the property boundaries and the creation of a buffer zone. The State Party proposes to add a net additional area of 2.5 hectares to the property and to create a buffer zone of 1,568.47 hectares. The proposed changes to the boundaries are the addition or the removal of water management features consistent with there being attributes or not attributes of the outstanding universal value, and all this is based on a detailed survey that has been undertaken. The proposed buffer zone comprises the river valley where the monastery is situated. Existing management arrangements will continue to operate with the modified boundaries. Existing legal protection will extend to the modified boundary, and a range of statutory rules and regulations will apply to the proposed buffer zone. ICOMOS considers that the proposed modifications will contribute to the protection and management of the property. ICOMOS recommends that the proposed minor modification to the boundary and creation of a buffer zone be approved. An additional recommendation is also offered. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any comments on this item? No amendments? No.
We have no amendments. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you
Chair.
very much. So we can approve the decision as it's submitted, 8B45. Thank you. Now we come to number 46, Venice and its lagoon, Italy. ICOMOS, the floor is yours.
Thank you again, Chair. The ICOMOS evaluation can be found at page 48 of the English version and page 60 of the French version of document 43com 8B1 add. Venice and its lagoon includes the whole city, which is an extraordinary architectural masterpiece, and the property illustrates the interaction between people and the ecosystem of their natural environment. The property was inscribed on the World Heritage List in 1987, but no buffer zone was defined. The issue of a buffer zone has been subject to several state of conservation reports and decisions by the World Heritage Committee since 2014, as well as a reactive monitoring mission. The State Party proposes a buffer zone of 511,028 hectares, 0.21 hectares. The size and function of the buffer zone were determined by analysing the pressures and threats on the outstanding universal value arising from outside the property. The management of the proposed buffer zone is closely related to the coordinated management of the property, and the management plan is being updated to address the buffer zone. The buffer zone has several area-based protection systems based in specific legal instruments reflecting thematic levels of the buffer zone, these being environmental protection, historic landscape protection, and coordinated management of territory from a strategic metropolitan perspective. ICOMOS notes the reason for the large proposed buffer zone is founded on the necessity to add protection not only to the cultural heritage and its visual appreciation, but also to the natural environment preserving the lagoon, the quality of its water, and the balance of its sand features. ICOMOS considers that the proposed buffer zone will reinforce the integrity of the property and contribute to its coordinated management. However, ICOMOS recommends that the proposed minor modification to create a buffer zone be referred back to the State Party in order to allow it to clarify clarify why one water body has been excluded from the proposed buffer zone and reconsider the exclusion of this part of the southern coastal strip from the proposed buffer zone, and to sign a program agreement regarding the governance system for the buffer zone. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Can we proceed with the decision without any changes and amendments? No amendments?
No amendments.
Thank you very much. Then we declare 8B.46 adopted. Now we're coming to 8B47. ICOMOS, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. This presentation concerns the ICOMOS evaluation of the proposal for minor boundary modification to Bryggen in Norway. Bryggen was inscribed in the World Heritage List in 1979 on the basis of Criterion 3. At that time, there was no requirement for a buffer zone. The local area plan was adopted by local authorities in 2006 to protect the property and provides a legal basis for a buffer zone. This has now been submitted for formal adoption by the World Heritage Committee. The map provided by the State Party shows an area of 27 hectares surrounding the inscribed World Heritage property. The plan protects important sight lines and the visual integrity of Bryggen. ICOMOS considers that in general the proposed buffer zone is well justified and notes that protection mechanisms are already functioning. However, the northeastern edge of the proposed buffer zone provides an extremely narrow buffer and should be extended. ICOMOS also notes that the delineation of the buffer zone crosses through the middle of some buildings rather than aligning with the extent of buildings and allotments. ICOMOS is also concerned about a planned tram track that would pass through the buffer zone. This could have an impact on the outstanding universal value of Bryggen and needs careful assessment. In conclusion, ICOMOS recommends that the proposed minor boundary modification to add the buffer zone for Bryggen in Norway be referred back to the State Party to allow consideration of the possibilities to further extend the buffer zone in the northeast. ICOMOS also recommends that the proposed tram track alignment be subject to heritage impact assessment. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Are there any additions, comments on this proposed draft? No comments, no
amendments.
So, thank you very much. So we declare the document 8B47 adopted. Thank you. Document 8B.48, Portugal, University of Coimbra, Alta and Sofia. Please, ICOMOS, you are welcome.
Thank you, Chair. This presentation concerns the ICOMOS evaluation of the proposal for minor boundary modification to the University of Coimbra in Portugal. The University of Coimbra, Alta and Sofia was inscribed on the World Heritage List in 2013 on the basis of criteria 2, 4 and 6. The State Party proposes to include the Machado de Castro National Museum, an area of 0.7 hectares within the property boundary. This is currently included in the buffer zone. The proposal does not require any modification to the outer delineation of the buffer zone. The map provided by the State Party shows the proposed change to the Alta component at its southern and western edges. The State Party considers that adding this element will strengthen the integrity of the inscribed property. Machado de Castro National Museum is in the former Bishop's Palace, and there is a new building also included in the complex. The museum was established in 1911 and has been recently renovated. It houses collections related to the history of the Coimbra region. The museum has a long association with the university, and some collections are jointly managed. ICOMOS considers that the proposed modification will contribute to the strengthened integrity, management, and visitor presentation to the World Heritage property. Accordingly, ICOMOS recommends that the proposed minor modification to the boundary of the property of University of Coimbra, Portugal, be approved. Several additional recommendations have been included. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. No comments? No changes? As far as I know, no any.
No amendments.
Thank you very much. Then we proceed to the approval of the document 8B 48. We consider it adopted. Thank you very much. Document 8B 49, Sweden, Royal Domain of Drottningholm, sorry. So, ICOMOS, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. The ICOMOS evaluation of the minor boundary modification for Royal Domain of Drottningholm can be found at page 44 of the English version and page 56 of the French version of document INF.8B1 ad. The Royal Domain of Drottningholm was inscribed on the World Heritage List in 1991 on the basis of criterion 4 as a finest example of the 18th century North European royal residence inspired by the Palace of Versailles. The present minor boundary modification is proposed to provide the property with a buffer zone. Although this was not required at the time of inscription, its needs was regularly highlighted, included by the periodic report submitted by the State Party in 2006, as well as by ICOMOS reports prepared in the process for remodeling the Ekero Road and the construction of the Stockholm bypass. The proposed buffer zone covers more than 3,200 hectares and corresponds to the boundaries of the Låvö Nature Reserve. The area has strong cultural character linked with the outstanding universal value of the World Heritage property, and therefore its boundaries have been delineated with the participation of both nature and culture specialists. The proposal for the buffer zone was developed jointly by the Stockholm County Administrative Board, the National Property Board of Sweden, and Ekero Municipality, with the participation of local residents and landowners. The proposed buffer zone allows better understanding of the value and significance of the World Heritage property, ensuring long-term preservation of the agricultural landscape, which has been owned by the Crown and has served its need for supplies for centuries. In conclusion, ICOMOS recommends that the proposed buffer zone for the Royal Domain of Drottningholm, Sweden, be approved. ICOMOS also proposed one ancillary recommendation concerning the development of an integrated management plan for the World Heritage property and its buffer zone, including a spatial development plan. Thank you, Mr. Chairperson.
Thank you very much. Any comments on behalf of the members of the committee? We have an additional draft decision on this item. May I apply to the rapporteur to give us information, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, we have one small amendment proposed for this decision in paragraph 3, which would now read, recommends that the State Party develop a new integrated managed plan for the World Heritage property and the buffer zone, including a spatial development plan in cooperation with the County Administrative Board and Ekero Municipality, as well as a comprehensive mobility plan. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Are there any objections on addition of this item to the draft decision? I don't see any comments, so can we approve the decision as proposed in the last version? Fine. We declare the item 8B49 adopted in the last version. We come to the decision, draft decision of 8B50, Plurinational State of Bolivia, City of Potosi. ICOMOS, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. The city of Potosi was inscribed on the World Heritage List in 1987 on the basis of criteria 2, 4, and 6, but without a buffer zone. The collapse of a portion of the summit of Cerro Rico in February 2011 led to the inscription of the property on the World Heritage in Danger list in 2014. In this context, the committee requested the official submission of a buffer zone to protect the visually sensitive areas around the property. The clarification of the limits of the property and a final proposal for the buffer zone are part of the desired corrective measures for the removal of the property from the World Heritage List in Danger. The World Heritage Center and ICOMOS provided technical assistance during a mission in 2017. The minor boundary modification now submitted comprises a property of close to 2,211 hectares, surrounded by a buffer zone of 4,428 hectares. However, despite the clarity of this georeferenced map, information provided in other sections of this request for minor boundary modifications raise questions as to the exact legal and factual boundary definition in some areas. ICOMOS therefore recommends that the examination of the proposed minor boundary modification and the proposed buffer zone of the city of Potosi be referred back to the state party in order to allow it to clarify these aspects, as well as provide additional information on the rationale for this delineation, provide explicit information on the legal and management aspects and the different regulations applicable. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairperson.
Thank you very much. So the proposal is clear. We have amendments?
No amendments.
So can we approve the proposal proposed by ICOMOS document? I don't see any objections. Thank you very much. So we approve the document 8B50 as proposed. Thank you. 8B51, please. Churches of Chiloé from Chile. ICOMOS, you are welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. This serial property was inscribed in December 2000 on the basis of criteria 2 and 3. The original buffer zones consisted in some cases of narrow areas that did not completely surround the components. A joint World Heritage Center ICOMOS reactive monitoring mission in 2013 advised on a number of issues, including the review of the buffer zones and regulatory measures for the protection of the setting of the churches of Chiloé, and requested to submit a minor boundary modification for the property to establish a final proposal for the buffer zones and wider setting for each of the components of the serial nomination. Since then, the state party has worked on a comprehensive plan for the protection of the surroundings of the churches in a participatory process, which included local communities associated to the churches. In 2016 and 2018, ICOMOS elaborated technical reviews of the proposed preliminary protection areas. While a number of buffer zones now proposed are fully adequate, ICOMOS considers that the buffer zone proposed for the component of Qinzhou could be extended to include a wider selection of the landscape and vegetation behind the church. For the components of Nuestra Señora de Gracia de Nercón, shown here, Natividad de María de Ixuac Church, Santiago Apostol de Tif Church, and San Antonio de Vilupuli Church, the proposed buffer zones are adequate. The buffer zone proposed for San Carlos Borromeo de Chonchi Church could be extended to include a larger part of the surrounding landscape, which provides the setting of this component. The same applies to the Nuestra Señora de Patrocinio de Tenuán component, which should hence be revised. The buffer zone proposed for San Antonio de Colo is adequate. However, the buffer zone proposed for San Juan Bautista de San Juan should be extended to include a larger area of the surrounding landscape as proposed in the preliminary protection plan. And lastly, the buffer zone proposed for Nuestra Señora del Rosario de Chelín is adequate. ICOMOS in result recommends to approve the buffer zones proposed for all components except for previously highlighted churches, for which it is necessary to include larger areas to adequately protect the setting of these properties. ICOMOS further recommends the state party to provide the exact extent of each component part of the property and to finalize the identification of buffer zones for the remaining churches of Castro, Caguas, and to conclude the process for the churches of Achao, Rilan, Aljachilo, and Dakalwe, as well as urgently establish a management plan for the property. Thank you, Mr. Chairperson.
Thank you very much. No comments? No additions?
We have no amendments, thank you.
Thank you very much. So we proceed and we approve the item 8B 51 as amended, adopted. Item 8B 52, please. Chile. ICOMOS, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. This is the minor boundary modification for Humberstone in Santa Laura in Chile. The property was inscribed on the World Heritage List in 2005 on the basis of criteria 2, 3, and 4. At the time of the inscription, the surface of the property was 285 hectares with a buffer zone of 11,470 hectares. In 2011, the state party submitted a request for a minor boundary modification to the boundaries of the property, which was approved. The committee requested that also a buffer zone be established and approved in line with the revised boundaries. Since 2017, a proposed buffer zone has been established and work was carried out on its legal protection as a typical zone, being improved by the National Monuments Council on January 2018. This draft buffer zone was already welcomed by the World Heritage Committee at its 42nd session and has now been formally submitted as a minor boundary modification request. ICOMOS recommends that the proposed creation of a buffer zone for the Humberstone and Santa Laura Salpeterworks, Chile, be approved. Thank you, Mr. Chairperson.
Thank you very much. Any comments? Any additions?
No amendments.
Thank you very much. So we can proceed and approve the document 8B 52 as amended. Thank you very much. We proceed to the document 8B.53, Honduras, Maya site of Copan. ICOMOS, you are welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. At the time of inscription of the property on the World Heritage List, no precise limits of the property nor a buffer zone were defined. In the framework of the retrospective inventory, the World Heritage Committee urged the state party to officially submit the limits of the World Heritage property and its buffer zone. The boundary of the World Heritage property was then approved by the World Heritage Committee at its 41st session. A buffer zone, larger than the one under review in this present submission, has been proposed in the Management Plan 2014 to 2020, but was not approved by the responsible government authorities. The now proposed buffer zone seems adequate. However, ICOMOS notes that the map of the proposed buffer zone delineation does not include the designated areas of influence mentioned, nor the location of the 11 protected enclaves. Therefore, ICOMOS recommends that the examination of the proposed buffer zone for the Maya site of Copan, Honduras, be referred back to the state party in order to allow it to complete the map by including the area of influence and the 11 protective enclaves, as well as provide more information on its legal protection and enforcement. Thank you, Mr. Chairperson.
Thank you very much. No comments? No amendments?
No amendments.
Thank you very much. We can proceed and approve document 8B 53 to be adopted like amended. Thank you very much. Now we come to the natural sites. So I think that we have to give the floor to IUCN if they are ready to proceed with the document 8B41. Denmark, Ilulissat Icefjord. You're welcome. IUCN.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon. This is the Ilulissat ice field in Denmark. IUCN's evaluation of the minor boundary modification of Ilulissat ice ford is on page 13 of both the English and French versions of the AD IUCN evaluation report. The property was inscribed on the World Heritage List in 2004. Next slide, please. IUCN notes that this minor boundary modification request entails two parts. Firstly, a correction to the area of the property due to adoption of digital mapping technology, but not to change the boundaries. The previous measurement was 402,400 hectares, whilst the corrected figure is 399,800 hectares, a difference of less than 1%. And secondly, the creation of a local and recreational buffer zone surrounding the property. The correction of the area of the property has no impact on its OUV and is not, in fact, a boundary modification. The retrospective statement of OUV for the property refers to the proposal to create a buffer zone, so this is already anticipated. IUCN welcomes the proposal, which represents an improvement in the overall protection and management system for the property. However, IUCN notes that the documentation is not fully clear regarding the intended operation of the buffer zones, in particular in regards to what activities and or developments are permitted in the local and the recreational buffer zones. It would be important that the state party clarifies this matter in terms of general management provisions and that appropriate environmental and social impact assessments, as well as assessment of potential impact on OUV, are undertaken for any proposed developments. Next slide. The decision, Mr. Chair, the draft decision recommending approval of the proposed minor boundary modification for this property is set out on page 7 of the English and page 8 of the French versions of working document 8B AD. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. I consider there is no any objections and amendments.
No amendments.
Thank you very much. So we can approve this document 8B41 adopted like proposed. Thank you very much. And now 8B dot 42, Brazil, Cerrado Protected Areas, Chapada dos Veadeiros, and Emas National Parks. IUCN, the floor is yours. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon, everybody. IUCN's evaluation of this property is on page 19 of both the English and French versions of the AD IUCN evaluation report. The property was inscribed on the World Heritage List in 2001. Next slide, please. In 2010, information was received by the World Heritage Center and IUCN that the Chapada dos Veadeiros National Park component of the property had been reduced following a ruling that the federal decree which expanded the area of the national park was void, as the expansion process in 2001 did not meet the required public consultation standards. This resulted in a significant part of the World Heritage property not benefiting anymore from any legal protection, and the World Heritage Committee, in a number of its decisions, had expressed concerns over the situation and the lack of legal protection. The state party has since been working on restoring the legal protection of the property through a new expansion of the Chapada dos Veadeiros National Park and consideration of additional measures. The proposal now made by the state party presents a new boundary of the property which would expand its overall area by more than 3.5%. Overall, the new proposed boundaries largely follow the current boundaries of the property, with some areas excluded and some areas added along the border. IUCN concludes that overall, the proposed revised boundaries would provide adequate protection for the OUV of the property as inscribed and can mostly be accepted as meeting the relevant integrity requirements. However, IUCN notes one exception to this advice, which is that the Chapada dos Veadeiros National Park component of the property was clearly inscribed as a coherent area, but the proposal includes one area near the center of the component that is proposed for excision, creating therefore a hole within this component. The status of this area requires clarification with the state party, which was not possible in the minor boundary modification process, given that it does not provide for evaluation missions and was not possible here at this committee session. IUCN considers that it would be problematic from a management perspective to excise this area from the World Heritage property, and therefore recommends that this area not be removed from the property via the minor boundary modification process under consideration. So next slide, please, with the decision. The draft decision recommending approval of the proposed minor boundary modification for this property, with exception for the excision of the area at the center of the Chapado dos Veadeiros component of the property, is set out on page 7 of the English and page 8 of the French versions of working document 8b.add. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, IUCN. Any comments? Any amendments?
No amendments.
Thank you very much, Rapporteur. So we proceed to adoption of the document 8B42 as amended. Approved. Thank you very much. We have now finished the examination of minor boundary modification. We will now continue with the agenda item 8B and proceed with the adoption of 10 statements of outstanding universal value of properties inscribed at the previous session of the committee. You will find the 10 statements in the document 8b.add, and I would like to invite Alessandro Balsamo to present this point. You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We are dealing here with 10 statements of outstanding universal value that were provisionally adopted at previous session by the committee. And the 10 statements concern the following properties: China, Fangjishan; Germany, Naumburg Cathedral; Iran, Sassanid archaeological landscape of Fars region; Iraq, the Awar of southern Iraq, refuge of biodiversity and the relict landscape of the Mesopotamian cities; Italy, Ivrea, industrial city of the 20th century; Mexico, Tehuacan, Cuictlan Valley, originary habitat of Mesoamerica; Oman, ancient city of Kalat; Republic of Korea, Sansa Buddhist mountain monasteries in Korea; Turkey, Aphrodisias, and Turkey, Göbekli Tepe. These statements have been refined with the cooperation of the advisory bodies and the concerned state parties, and they are now ready for adoption. And draft decision 43-8B54 can be found in document 8B on page 11 of the English version and on page 12 of the French version. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other opinions? Any amendments we have or no?
No amendments.
Thank you very much. So we can proceed to approval of the document 8B.54 to be adopted as amended. Thank you very much. And the last decision on item 8B concerns the statement of outstanding universal value of the transboundary properties, Malote Drakensberg Park, Lesotho, South Africa. The draft decision is included in document 8B.add. And please, Mr. Balsamo, give us some explanations. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In its decision 41-7B38, the World Heritage Committee, at its 41st session in Krakow 2017, requested the state parties of Lesotho and South Africa to present an updated statement of outstanding universal value for the Malote Drakensberg Park World Heritage property, and by incorporating the findings of the recent studies related to the cultural attributes of the property as mentioned in that decision. The statement shows the slight amendments made to the text, not touching at all at the criteria statements. And the statement and the related draft decision 43-8B55 is on page 28 of the English version of document 8B-add and on page 31 of the French version of the same document. Thank you.
Thank you very much. No objections? Any amendments?
No amendments.
No. Thank you very much. So we declare the draft decision 43.8b.55 adopted as amended. Thank you very much. Now we finished the consideration of this huge document, and I have an apply from a delegation of Iran to give short presentation of the, I think, poetry considered with the inscription of the sites. So,
thank you, sir. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Our dear WHC continued its journey of the recognition of one another's heritage, values, thoughts, and traditions. The miracle of the World Heritage is making a channel through history to uncover from the dust of ages what has been cloaked in the mystery. A chorus sings when you inscribe a precious nomination, birds in flight together to ensure this treasure's full conservation. Let our appreciation blossom if I can count on your consent to all those ensuring the success of this shining event. On the wings of history, you have given consideration to the fortunate sites now accorded designation. Or we have overcome walls and borders to fly free, hugging the magical passport offered by WHC. Heritage is transcendental above the orbit of its nation, and it is UNESCO that joins all of us in the creation of this new language. Rather than keeping us apart, we now all feel united in the heritage of the heart. To such a variety of lands we now feel we belong, that joyfully we raise our voice in harmonious song. What a word it may be if the logic of this session becomes the melody behind our daily expression, so that far from seeing foreign lands and other, we turn toward them as toward a true brother. The wondrous treasures would welcome with delight to visit them as a newly inscribed World Heritage Site. Dear friends, this session of the World Heritage Committee has been embraced in Baku, has been embraced by Baku, such a heart-inspiring city. Dear neighboring Republic of Azerbaijan, shall I mention that we are eagerly awaiting the Hirkanian extension. Thank you.
We consider this intervention like an action plan. So we're already moving towards that. So thank you very much for this poetic moment. And now I would like to announce that we had considered all these nominations, and now we have 29 new properties and 1 extension inscribed in UNESCO heritage list, and total number of the sites are 1,121. I congratulate all of us with this achievement. Now, still we have time, so as we agreed by the schedule, we would like to proceed with our agenda item 8A, devoted to the tentative lists. Please note that a revised document 8A was issued recently and distributed to you. Mr. Balsamo, can you briefly present the document?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Document 43-8A Rev was published and distributed earlier today and presents the tentative list of all state parties submitted in conformity with the operational guidelines as of 15 April 2019. In particular, Annex 1 presents the overall situation relative to tentative lists. Annex 2 of document 8A presents all the new tentative lists or addition to existing tentative lists which are being submitted by state parties since the last session of the World Heritage Committee in Panama. And Annex 3 presents a list of all sites on tentative lists received from state parties in alphabetical and regional order. As of 15 April 2019, of the 193 state parties which have ratified the convention, 184 have submitted tentative lists in accordance with the requirements specified in the operational guidelines. 9 state parties have not submitted any tentative list. And all the nominations submitted for examination at this session are included on the tentative list of the state parties concerned. Since the preparation of document 8A for the 42nd session of the committee in 2018 up until 15 April last, 37 state parties have submitted new tentative lists or modified existing lists. The number of new properties added to existing tentative list is 58, and currently there are 1,731 sites on the tentative list. Decision 43-8A is on page 2 of both the English and French version of document 8A. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any comments on this document? So I would like to invite you to adopt the draft decision 43-8A. If we don't have any comments and other amendments to the draft?
We have no amendments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Then we declare draft decision 43-8A adopted as amended and item 8A closed. We shall now move to the agenda item 8B, devoted to the issue of the clarification of property boundaries and areas by states parties. Please refer to document 8D. Mr. Balsamo, can you move to the item?
Thank you, Chair. In front of you, you have document 8D, which presents cartographic and geographic information provided by state parties on boundary clarification of 9 World Heritage properties. And as you know, in the framework of the Retrospective Inventory project initiated in 2004, the World Heritage Center has worked to determine which properties inscribed before 1998 have missing or inadequate boundary information. The Center has then encouraged state parties to submit cartographic and geographic information about the boundaries of these World Heritage properties as inscribed. In addition, state parties have also provided technically improved maps as a follow-up to the second cycle of the periodic reporting. Satisfactory boundary clarification have been submitted for 7 World Heritage properties, all of which are included in the document 8D. To be considered adequate, boundary clarification must be consistent with the nomination dossier, the evaluation conducted by the advisory body, and the decision of the World Heritage Committee at the time of the inscription. Maps also must meet the current technical requirements. And great progress continues to be made in clarifying the boundaries of World Heritage properties, but many remain imprecise or unclear. The World Heritage Center provides its continuous support to all state parties in the preparation of boundaries clarification. Draft decision has been included on page 3 of the English and French copies of the document 8D. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Balzano. Before proceeding to the adoption, I would like to inform you that we have one amendment as far as I know. Mrs. Rapporteur, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have one amendment proposed by Uganda to paragraph 6 of this draft decision, which would read, requests the states parties which have not yet answered the questions raised in the framework of the retrospective inventory to provide all clarifications and documents as soon as possible by 1 December 2019 at the latest for their subsequent examination by the 44th session of the World Heritage Committee in 2020, if such clarifications and documentation meet the technical requirements. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, can we approve the document as adopted, as proposed in the new version? No objections? I don't see any. Thank you very much. So we approve the document 43.8D as proposed in the last version. Approved. Thank you very much. Now we close this item and we move to the item 8E, adoption of the retrospective statements of outstanding universal value. Refer to the document 8E and 8E.add. Mr. Balzama, the floor is yours again.
Thank you, Chair. Document 8E and 8E.add concern the adoption of 20 retrospective statements of outstanding universal value. Document 8E presents 17 draft retrospective statements for which the review process has been finalized since the 42nd session of the World Heritage Committee, and the document 8E.add contains 3 retrospective statements that were received according to the deadline but delayed for technical reasons. Out of the 20 retrospective statements, 6 are from the Asia-Pacific region and 14 from the Europe and North America. Since 2009, the World Heritage Committee adopted 715 retrospective statements and 78 statements, retrospective statements, and 78 statements, including those presented this year, are still to be finalized and presented to the committee. 2 in Africa, 14 in Arab states, 15 in Asia-Pacific, 45 in Europe and North America, and 2 in Latin America and Caribbean region. A list of properties for which draft retrospective statements of outstanding universal value are proposed for adoption is included in draft decision, and the text of each draft statement in the language in which it has been submitted by the state party can be found in the annex of the document. A small technical error occurred in the annex of English version of the document, where the last words of the statement for Plitvice Lakes National Park, Croatia, are missing, and the full statement is included in the French version of the document. With the agreement of the committee, the properties Cathedral of Notre Dame, former Abbey of Saint-Remy, and the Palace of Reims, and Provins, town of medieval fairs, in Vézelay, Church and Hill, all the 3 in France, for which the draft retrospective statements of outstanding universal value are presented in document 8E.add, will be integrated into the list of those being adopted in the decision 43.8E.
1, 2, 3.
1,
4, 5. Aha, açıkdı içinde. Açık.
Sorry, what is the sound coming? Something interfering, so. Sorry, Mr. Bazama, follow up.
Once adopted, the retrospective statement of outstanding universal value will be translated by the World Heritage Center and made available on its website, subject to availability of funds. Please find draft decision on page 1 of both the English and French copies of this document. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now I don't see any comments and any information about amendments, so we are
No amendments.
free to proceed with the adoption. The document 43-8E adopted. Thank you very much. Now, as I understand, we're finalizing the agenda for today. We're moving quite in a good tempo, and we are following the proposal of the reglement we had from the beginning. So now I think that it's time to finalize the meeting, and I would like to leave the floor to Mrs. Russell for announcements.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. We have at 6:30 the World Heritage Policy Compendium organized by the World Heritage Center in support, with support by the Australian government and the government of Korea, of the Republic of Korea, and this will take place in room A7. You know that we look at this document tomorrow, so today you have an opportunity to exchange with the experts who are here, so that will be quite lively. Then at 6:30, an event on the celebration of the inscription of Burj Bim Cultural Landscape Australia on the balcony. And at 6:10, there is the Arabic version of the thematic study, the cultural heritage of water in the Middle East and the Maghreb by ICOMOS and ARC-WH in room B3. That's all for today, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Our program is going on. So thank you for very effective discussion today. Have a nice time today in the evening and proceed tomorrow at 10 o'clock to start our next session. Thank you very much. The Bureau meeting will be at 9:30 as usual. Thank you very much. Have a nice evening.